lab. I just joined a faculty at Hopkins. I've been working on various different data transformation pipeline, starting with N3C, as well as claims data like CMS, and now survey instruments through AI Ready, as well as the FHIR resource data to OMAP CDM. So, and today I'll be sharing some of the custom concepts we created in order to map the survey instrument data that we're using in AI Ready project, and wanted to get your feedback.
Terrific. Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, so item 1, we've got there. So just a reminder that we did relaunch the landscape assessment at the end of last week. So basically, this is sort of a follow-up effort to try to get as much information as we can about what people have already done or are doing in the survey space, so we can create a resource of GitHubs and other code and things that are available for surveys to date, and then proceed from there. So I know a number of you have filled out the survey last time or have talked to the group about your work, but if you're on the call and you haven't, please do. We shortened it a little bit, so hopefully it's a little bit quicker to get through. But mostly what we're, like I said, we're trying to do is get a true assessment of the work that's been out there, and also be able to share what you've accomplished in terms of ETLs and other resources. And so with that, I will go ahead and hand it over to Alexander, who's going to be talking about the Vocabulary-a-thon effort at the Global Symposium this year.
All right, so I'm starting sharing my screen. Can you see the screen?
Yes, I can see it.
All right, thank you, Nicole, and everybody who joined. So here is the thing. So over the years, the vocabulary domain and the vocabulary system in the Odyssey community has accumulated a bunch of problems, right? So, and we're using this beautiful metaphor of the iceberg with two different parts. The top here, which is marked here as done, which actually means that over the course of a couple of years, we've been working on the solution and resolution of these problems that are mentioned here, right? So probably should have been melted, right? But for some reason it's not. And another thing is ATC, which is partially done here. So you can see the color is a little bit different. But the rest of the iceberg is not even done and not even started, right? So there is a whole bunch of the old vocabulary things and issues that haven't been resolved for the years, but they keep popping up in the different discussions and whatever, all sort of vital projects and research. And most of the users, I think, either challenged with the issues or struggle with some of these issues, or at least know about the issues, right? So this year, since most of the vocabulary work is focused on the maintenance of the core vocabularies, and there is not a lot of happening on resolving the old issues, there is an idea that is we've been talking about it for a couple of years already, right? So what if at one day we sit together and run the vocabulary-a-thon, right? Because athons is something that is very welcomed in Odyssey, right? And we've been having a couple of them: study-a-thons, phenotype-a-thons, and other ones. What if we run the first ever vocabulary-a-thon during the Global Symposium this year, right? So that is the idea. So why is it relevant for the survey working group? Because there's some issues, and one of them is specifically the one that Masha have been talking about last time, as on the list here as a potential issues issues that we outlined as possible issues to work on, right? Again, the idea here is that community takes on and helps us to work on the issues, right? Not solely, definitely with the help of the vocabulary experts and the support of the vocabulary folks, but still the community members will themselves take the challenge and work on solving the vocabulary issues. So the format is that we have to be prepared and spend some time before the vocabulary-a-thon day, at least on the problem space, so that everybody understands what is happening, what is the problem statement, and what directions we can actually move on and work on the solution space. So, and then on the vocabulary a thon day is going to be the brainstorm session and the resolution of the problem space. But it doesn't actually mean that we're going to fix all the problems at one day. It only means that we're going to sit together, work together, and then outline the possible solutions, and then later on work on the solutions within the same groups of people. So one of the issues that is mostly relevant for the survey working group is actually the survey and the entity attribute value type of data, right? So this is exactly what Masha has been talking last time, and the survey working group is already familiar with that. And Nicole and others, and specifically Melanie and Claire, have been included into the discussion, and the vocabulary people. So here is the idea, right? So we sit together, and then all these different issues and ideas and proposals that people put on the table are going to be challenged, thought through, and then probably the potential solutions and the course of actions to get to the solutions will be put in place. So that is the idea for the vocabulary a-thon, and specifically the survey working group as a potential member of the challenge. So I think it's pretty much it. Nicole, if you want to discuss like the possible whatever the actual format and people involved, or promote it in some different ways. Yep. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you for the introduction to it. Yeah, I definitely like the FOMIC example of what needs to be chipped away at. It's a little daunting, but I also think the community has taken on a lot of daunting things together. And
well,
I just
we are. So we are exaggerating a little bit, right? It's like not that really bad, right? But there is still a list of the problems, and we started solving them, but there's still plenty of them that we haven't yet started. So I like this metaphor, right?
Yes, I do. And and part of it is your first step is defining, like you said, defining the problem. So one thing I wanted to check on is the time for the vocabulary-thon 2 hours. Is that correct? Or do you have a longer block?
Well, we don't have any designated time at the moment, right? So we're gonna actually put it into the symposium agenda. At the moment, it's not yet defined. So we're not the working group, we're not the workshop, or something different.
Okay, gotcha. You're a separate thing.
That is why I was talking about a separate day as a possibility.
Okay.
But probably it's not gonna happen. So yeah, but I think it's would be something like 2-4 hours in one of the symposium days.
Okay. That sounds good. Part of the reason I was asking, because we also do have a designated 2 hours for the survey work group on the workshop day. And so other than we've got plans to make, I have not specified a lot for that time. So I think one of the things we'll need to figure out, depending on how much time is designated on the vocabulary-thon end, is, if for the second 2 hours that the survey group meets, whether we want to continue that discussion, or if there are other things we need to think about for the surveys in addition to vocabulary that we want to tackle during that time. And I have to admit, unfortunately, off the top of my head, I don't have a list of what those things are. So I need to go back through some notes from our last few discussions with the various groups, but those are some ways we can use our time. I also know a relatively limited number of you are going to the Global Symposium, but I think maybe what we could do is, start working on sort of our plan. So I've asked that, and I'm not sure what deadlines you were thinking of, Alexander, but what I would like to do, this landscape survey is going to be open through August. And then at the end of August, I'd like to, consolidate those results, what we've gotten previously. And between that and our discussions with the vocabulary team, sort of guide what our proposals will be. And so for those of you who can come in person, great. But for those of you who can't, maybe we can spend time on our September meetings kind of fleshing things out, and discussing your concerns and things so that we can make sure those get represented when we meet in person.
Right, that is exactly the idea, right? So before the day, we need to put all the problem statement and all the problem space on the table and go through it so that we actually know what are the options, what are the possible directions. And then at the day, even though there might not be the full representation, but at least the group is already straightened in the way that they represent the whole group of people and they know all the backgrounds and all and the problem space, and then they can work on the solution space. And again, it's only one day, and it's not going to solve all the issues, but at least it would facilitate all the traction and all the work that people can and all the effort that people can put together. So yeah, and there would be a lot of follow-up work definitely after the vocabulary Sunday.
Definitely. Are there any questions for Alexander from the group? Okay.
Well, it would actually mean that we need volunteers to join the effort, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that the whole working group will join the effort, because, well, it's a little bit different than come to the working group and discuss things, right? So that would
it's a different
actually mean,
commitment.
Yeah, it means some commitment. Yeah, exactly. That's the point. And even though each of the teams will get the vocabulary experts to work on this brainstorming and the potential solutions, and challenge the potential solutions again, the vocabulary conventions, again, the vocabulary principle, and all these sort of things, it is still expected that the community members themselves will work on the problem, right? And the vocabulary experts will help them in a way that they can't really do that work individually, right? But rather would help the group and reach the goals. Stephanie, I think you raised your hand.
Yes. So I guess I'll be talking a little bit briefly later during the meeting, but for what we did for survey instruments to capture the AI ready data, do you want me to talk a little bit about that during the Global Symposium working group meeting?
Well, I think it's a question to Nicole, but if that would be part of the vocabulary-a-thon as well, then I would expect everybody to speak out before the day, right? So that is the problem statement.
Yeah, we kind of want to be able to hit the ground running and not spend the time developing the problem statement. But I think that's a really good segue, Stephanie, so that everyone knows what you're referring to with AI Ready and the work that group has been doing. So do you want to go ahead and introduce that?
Okay, let me try to share my screen. Am I sharing?
Yes, yeah, we can see that.
Yep.
Okay. So, oops, I think I went too fast. Okay, so AI Ready project is part of the NIH Bridge to AI Common Fund program aimed at establishing a robust foundation for the integration of AI Ready in health research. So this project is specifically designed to advance the AI and machine learning research for type 2 diabetes by generating ethically sourced and comprehensive data set for 4,000 participants across the United States with diverse background and varying type 2 level severity levels. And so one of the part of the AI Ready data generation group was to collect data through series of survey instruments to capture broad spectrum of information. And some of the survey instruments were well-vetted format so that it's commonly used in, to recognize various cognitive status of the, and as well as various disease condition from the participants. And to maximize the utility of these survey questions and answers, we try uh, to capture all of the terminology associated those data elements, including both question concept as well as the answer concept, and try to consistently map that data into OMAP. Because of the version that we're using is 5.3.1, there wasn't a survey table that we could use. So most of the question concepts are currently mapped to observation domain. And we tried to add additional mapping information to show like the system concept, like what are the provenance of the data and some of the metadata associated with the mapping elements, including the confidence level and such. So using all these standard, we transform all those survey instruments into OMAP CDM. But there were many elements that we couldn't quite capture because there wasn't a concept we could use. Many of the questions were sometimes complex in a way that uh, uh, both the question part as well as the answer part has to be merged as a concept. So I'll go into some of the details later. But for initial screening tool, the enrollment, if the question is asked if the participants, if they're pregnant or have type 2 diabetes, which are both exclusion criteria for the AI Ready. And then for those who are older, 40 or older and not pregnant, do not have type 1 diabetes, were presented with a series of questionnaires that they would answer. And we captured all of the answer concept as well. So some of the quick overall of the questionnaires includes their demographic information, their general health, their diabetic self-care process, as well as their depression scale, their SDOH concepts, as well as some of the neighborhood environment, the food insecurity concepts, and some of the problem areas in diabetes, as well as the vision and eye care data. So all the survey instruments were designed through a REDCap, and then we captured all the data elements from those survey using their data dictionary, and we try to map them to OMAP concept IDs. So broadly, there were 3 different levels of mapping that we had to do. Some of the simple cases are like marital status, and there's already a concept we could use in OMAP vocabulary table, or some of the lab measurements like troponin. There's already a LOINC code that captures that measurement, so we didn't have any problem mapping those data elements. Some concepts were some of the, I guess, SDOH concepts were also available, but some of them did not exist. So for those cases, we minted new concept to just represent those exact questions that were captured in the survey instrument, because there was no way to map those data elements using existing vocabulary table. And then there were a complex form of questions where the question starts off as has a doctor or any other healthcare professionals ever told you that you have any of the following conditions? So based on how they answered this question, we had to combine both the answer and the question part of the survey instrument to map a concept. So like one of the big question we had is, do we just capture this as the question, beginning part of the question as one concept, or do we combine both the question as well as the answer concept to mean a concept ID? So that was like many debates that we had, and it would be good to get inputs from you all, how we should approach this issue. And when the participant answered positively, like yes, I have a heart attack, or congestive heart failure, or whatever it is, then we not only map those question and answer concept, but we also map the condition in the condition domain. So that's another complexity. So sometimes we were able to find like the condition, it's like myocardial infarction, or such as type 2 diabetes. So what we did end up doing was have one concept to represent this part of the beginning part of the question. And if they answer positively, we put that condition in the condition table. But additionally, when we map this question, we put the survey type that this data was captured through a self-reported survey, and in the qualifier concept, we put the condition for this myocardial infarction, so that there's a way to find the same question using the same concept, but also find what condition that was through a qualifier concept. I'm not sure if this is the best way to do it, but we wanted to present it to you all and see what you thought about this.
So what does the qualifier concept map to? The
Myocardial infarction.
myocardial.
Infarction.
And what is observation concept ID map to?
Has a doctor or other healthcare professional ever told you that you have the following condition?
So observation concept ID is the question.
It's a question plus the answer, but that we put the answer concept, because the question is formulated in such a way how the participant provided the answer is the important part of the question. So it's not only the question concept we have to map, but it's a combination of both question and the answer concept we have to map on a same line.
So every question in the questionnaire, every question and answer response has its own unique concept in the concept table?
Well, yes, but for this particular series of questions where the beginning part of the question is same, and then how they answered was type 2 diabetes or myocardial infarction or congestive heart failure, those conditions are part of the questions. However, it's a detailed part of the question. The question always starts with this: has a doctor or other healthcare professional ever told you that you have the following condition? That
wait.
part of the question is same. So we
Yeah.
use the same concept ID to mint that question in the observation concept ID. But in the qualifier concept, we provided detail of what condition we're talking about so that you could find specific condition this question is referring to in the qualifier concept. And then in the type concept, we made sure that this is not a data from EHR, but this is from the survey instrument. But if we were to use it, if we were using CDM 6.0, we could, instead of polluting the observation domain, we could put it in the survey. But
yeah,
because
but it
we're
doesn't
using,
really exist. Like the survey table in 6.0, I don't think was something that ever came to fruition, which I think was one of the reasons the version was rolled back and one of the things we're trying to do. I do feel like, Stephanie, you have a really good use case for a lot of what we were talking about the last time we met. And I think one of the things that would be very helpful from the group and, you know, as part of trying to set up our discussions at the Global Symposium is what are the use cases for wanting to keep a question and answer pair versus just having the fact, right? Because you know, we think about, you know, with vocabulary, one of the things we don't do is we don't include null or negative information. So if you have a heart attack or you have a heart condition, it will say heart attack since that's what we're dealing with now, then you want the fact that this participant had a heart attack and that it was self-reported because it's coming from a survey. So that gets you the participant or patient information. So then what's the use case for maintaining the question answer pair, like what that answer came from? Like, you know, I don't disagree that it's something people want. I'm just trying to better understand what the use cases are for maintaining a question answer pair versus just mapping the fact of heart attack.
right. So we did mention in OMAP, you don't really store the negative responses, but only if an event occurred or a condition exists. So that's why this question concept, but they wanted to capture whether participant answered yes or no answer. So the only way to do that was to just put it in the observation, what the question concept was and what the response was is a value as a concept ID, yes, no, or no, prefer not to say, or no answer provided.
And so are there planned analyses for this, or is it just for the maintenance of the information?
I
like,
think,
yeah, like for the
yeah,
question answer pair versus what you would be doing with the OMOP data.
so we made sure that all the positive answer was captured in the proper domain based on the concept ID. But to complete the fact that we did ask this particular question and they provided an answer, just so that the completeness of survey is also captured, we put the questions of we try to map every single question that was asked in the survey instrument and provided the answer and how they answered it, and specified the provenance of this data came from a survey, self-reported survey.
Okay, thanks. Diane, I think I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we've got a lot of questions like this in a lot of our data as well. And we also do map the knows and unknowns or prefer not to answer in the observation domain. So I think we do something a little similar. We don't use the qualifier concept like this, although I think that's pretty cool idea. So I'll definitely bring that back to our group. But we do also map the knows and prefer not to answer because our statisticians do like to know, like Stephanie was saying, that the question was answered and it's not just missing data that we're not sure if they have ever been told if they had a heart attack or not. So our statisticians actually do use that information for the analyses that they do as a way to verify a real no versus they don't know. But I just wanted to add that as we do similar mapping as well.
Yeah, so I'm going to play a little devil's advocate with this. I definitely appreciate this, statistician point of view. I worked for many years as a biostatistician, and I like to know all my flavors of missing. Did they skip the question? Is it just that they don't have it? Did they not see the questionnaire? Like all the different ways you can have no. So, or missing. I appreciate that. I think my question to you and to the group for the discussion is, in order for the statisticians to do that, does it need to be an OMOP? I think that's sort of my question. Like, when you think about the types of analyses you would do and utilizing the tools that Odyssey has to date, what is there things going on with analyses of the question answer pairs that works better, or there's a reason to have it for OMOP as opposed to those types of analyses occurring outside of OMOP, and having more of the fact process inside of OMOP, or using the OMOP model to be able to use the Odyssey tools or combine with other studies or things like that. So that's something I'm trying to understand a little bit better. I certainly understand wanting to preserve that data for those types of analyses. And also, we do a lot of work, as I'm sure a lot of you do, trying to understand skip patterns and are there problem questions and things like that. So I certainly understand maintaining the data. I would love to know the use case for doing it in OMOP.
I would have to ask our statisticians for that. And they are also new to learning how to use OMOP for analyses. So any feedback or guidance that you guys have to give us because you've done analyses using OMOP data, we would also love to be able to understand how others use OMOP data for analysis. And like you said, where are the places where maybe these skip patterns or can be done some other way and not within OMOP. So we're also learning, and any feedback or guidance that you guys have will be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I think it's a learning curve for all of us. I think it's just trying to get to those, to understand these use cases so then we can think about what guidance makes sense. Like, on the other end, I might argue it makes sense to answer the question answer pairs simply for the ability to pool across surveys. That might be as opposed to just pooling across the facts. So,
Yes. So some of
that might
the
be a reason.
another section of the survey instrument we use in Bridge to AI Ready data set was things like Montreal Cognitive Assessment Instruments. And so I think those instruments are commonly used to assess a person's cognitive abilities after they had a stroke or after they had a brain trauma injuries or anything like that. And then having those survey data linked to the participant quite easily through if we fleshed out the survey domain a little bit, and have it right there while we're looking at their EHR data and their lab measurement or any type of their vision information. I think it's useful because it'll be just right there for them to reference using the same participant ID that's harmonized into OMAP CDM.
Yeah, this is very helpful. And one of the things that would be super helpful too, we get this to a point in the survey, in the landscape assessment, but I know there's more information out there. For those of you who are in the process of this mapping, like, Diane, as you just mentioned, you were, and Stephanie, I don't know if this is included in the information you emailed me, but just the list of surveys, like any surveys that are validated clinical surveys. I know we've talked about promise and things before, but knowing what standard surveys people are already mapping to in these groups, I think would also be helpful. Like, what's the low hanging fruit, what's been done or what's it been in progress, what are the use cases for these, can we use those to inform use cases for the homemade surveys or the strongly modified surveys,
Yeah,
as
so
we continue to develop things.
in our email, we sent you the link to actual PDF of the survey form, so you could reference how it was being asked. And we also listed all of the custom concepts we ended up minting because we couldn't find a concept we could readily use using the current vocabulary table. And for those cases where we think that this can be used because it's similar, even though it's not exact, we did provide the confidence level as well as what we think that we could use, but not really exactly the same. We also refer those relationship and put it in the GitHub for you to review. And we also provide a Google Sheet for you to add comments so that it's easier for you to say, okay, with this one, I think I would suggest this or that. And so you could easily put your comments on the Google Sheet. So I provided all those links for you to look at.
Terrific, thank you. And so for the rest of the groups, yeah. So Stephanie reached out with this request, and it was a couple of days before this meeting, so I thought it would be a perfect chance for her to introduce this topic to us. But I will forward the information that Stephanie has requested that we review, and we can look at it on our own and give some feedback, and maybe talk about it again on the 19th. Is that a good date for feedback for you, Stephanie? I knew the 7th was going to be sort of too soon.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. So great. Well, thank you so much for sharing. It's very exciting, the work that's being done. And, I'm also kind of excited as using some of the things, Stephanie and Diane, that you've done as sort of our use cases. And again, where does it make sense to map the question answer pairs relative to Odyssey? And, where does it make sense to map things as facts, or both? They're not mutually exclusive. But I think it's been helpful to see some concrete examples. And I know, Diane, you presented yours earlier, so, but it's definitely appreciated. Oh, you have more. Go ahead.
Just wanted to quickly mention that in the mapping table that you'll review, we try to look at the form, where the source data came from with a very specific source code ID and the description of what that data element was. And we provided the mapping in this format, which is very similar to the concept relationship and concept table that OMA vocabulary uses. So just wanted to give you that structure format so you are aware of it.
Great. Thank you. Are there any questions for Stephanie about the process or the request to review that process? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which was basically other things we might want to discuss when we have our workshop or prepare for the workshop. So we know we're going to be discussing, mapping question answer pairs versus facts and what the pros and cons are and some use cases for those. And also looking at, specific vocabulary mappings that have been done. What are some of the other things we might want to address as a group relative to coming up with some best practices or use cases? I know it's early-ish, but
I'm sorry, Stephanie, can you repeat the question? Best practices or use cases for what?
so for when we want to use question answer pairs versus facts. And again, not that they're mutually exclusive, but I think we want to know what the use cases are. So not just sort of the standard survey analyses, but what are the benefits of doing those in OMOP for the people using it, right? Because I think as anybody who's been playing with this knows, it's an investment, right? We're talking about investments that have already been made, and then we're talking about future investments, by our work group, and then of course the others who will use our recommendations or best practices. So I think having those use cases, because from what I've seen anyway, it's definitely more of a challenge to map question answers pairs than is the facts, right? So if that investment is going to be made, what are those use cases?
Yeah,
So that, yeah. So, but also in addition to these, are there other aspects of working with survey data in OMOP or, using that model that we also need to discuss? What are some of the other things not specific to vocabulary?
yeah, absolutely. So from a logical or non from a logical level, not necessarily an implementation level, I agree. There's two main concepts, two main use cases, if you will. One is, as we said, preserve the survey data, preserve what the actual question answer pair was, and then the second, conceptual one, not necessarily saying how to implement it, is so if we go back to a couple slides, the one that I had commented on earlier, um, being able to find the actual observation. And it wasn't clear to me from the slide if there was a second record that was created. Stephanie talked about, that for the question answer pair, there was the observation, the observation ID pointed to, it sounded like the question answer pair, but then there was also value as code that had the answer. So I was a little unclear about that. But anyways, the idea that if there's only that concept vector and an observation, anyone that goes to look, does this person have a myocardial infarct? They're not going to look for that question answer pair. They're going to look for a secondary record that says this a myocardial observation of myocardial infarct. So that second record needs to be there. And it wasn't clear that that was the case, Stephanie. Is that the case in what you're modeling?
Yes, so the
Okay.
ETL person, when they map the data, not only insert the fact that this question was answered and how they answered that question, but if the response was a positive, meaning yes, I have a MI or congestive heart failure, then that condition itself will also be inserted into the
Yeah.
condition domain with the condition concept being, MI or congestive heart failure or type 2 diabetes, etc.
Cool.
So it's mapped dual, not
Yep.
and also when we capture the question survey, the questions in the survey instruments, we use the system concept of saying what the confidence is, what is a broad or exact map type of qualifier, so you could tell how that survey instrument data element was mapped. But also we put the response yes or no in the value as a concept ID, so you could definitely find how the answer was provided. And we made sure that provenance of the data came from the survey by specifying the type within that domain. So they know this is not from EHR data or claims data, but it came from a self-reported survey data. So that level of having that kind of standard, the kind of metadata associated with the survey, it's helpful. And having it right there, along with the EHR data, along with the claims data that we already have in the OMOP, saying, okay, these surveys data was collected for these participants. It's right there for you for that participant ID that you could link and then look at the survey domain. That would be it's all in one place. So you don't have to navigate and go look at Excel spreadsheet or some other form. And it's just
Yep.
it's all one place for you
Absolutely.
to reference for the research. So that's, I think, is very helpful. And then
Absolutely.
the custom concept we use as an AI ready extension, we could start off as, okay, these are the AI ready vocabulary ID. And as you decide to roll it into an official part of the OMA vocabulary, we could, initially we could just plop it as, these are the AI ready custom concepts it's available if you want to reference. But over time, as we review it and decided to adapt those into the formal part of the OMA vocabulary, we could, do that over time. We don't have to take all of this that we minted. But over time, you could say, okay, this is a very well vetted survey instrument that everybody uses because it's a Montreal cognitive assessment form. And I think we could say that's a MOCA terms, and we could roll it into MOCA vocabulary that everyone could use, not just AI ready group. So I think there's some, gain we could take away multiple
Excellent.
directions.
Yeah. Alexander?
Yeah, so these sort of approaches, when you actually combine both of the methods, right? You still have the data represented to the question and the answer, and you also map to the self-standing facts. They pretty well work in the local implementations, right? So you can have these 2 billion standard concepts. So you're fine with applying official Odyssey methods against the concepts that are sort of standard in your local implementation. And you're also sort of compliant with the usual Odyssey research if you want to look up just the facts, right? Exactly as you said, if you have myocardial infarction recorded to the condition. The problem starts when you actually want to bring these vocabularies, which could be local or not that local, because you mentioned that that could be like the worldwide standard, or at least some like regional standard, when you want to bring them to the official vocabularies, right? Because then the conflict between the different approaches and vocabularies takes place, right? So what happens if some other folks in some other country, they came up with a sort of local system with a little bit different ways of asking the questions and providing the answers, right? So what happens then? Would you map it to the one system that you mentioned? Would you add it as an alternative standard question answer pairs? So what happens next? These sort of problems is actually the essence of the problem space, right? Because there is no good way to standardize between the two, pretty much the same, but still very different systems, right? That is why
Right.
the current sort of situation we have in the vocabulary is when you have like a lot of this lawyering stuff that is like pretty much standard because it just like was put in place the years ago, and like it just like happened, right? So all of them are standard, and the fact that people are mapping to lawyering all over the place doesn't really mean that all these concepts were like weighed and chosen in a way that they're really good to be used at the standard representation of the survey data, right? So that is just what happened de facto. The way we're gonna run this going forward is actually the task, right? So whether the group is able to make this all sort of the decisions in the different disease spaces and the therapeutic areas, and they go through the list of surveys and making the decision what is worth being the standard and what is not, what could be mapped from one system to another and what could not be mapped, right? So all these sort of problems and like high level approach, because unless we have a high level approach, we can't really make the decisions. This is actually the task, and that is like really relates to the vocabulary so on and the problem we're proposing to solve.
Tamara, oh, I was gonna say it looked like you're about to talk. You made a
Oh,
couple
sorry. Yeah,
of
I
helpful
muted, but
points in the
then
chat. Would you mind like sharing out and elaborating those?
yeah, well, to the last comment by Alexander, it doesn't seem like this is a very different problem for surveys than it is for EHRs, in that different countries have different systems, and we have to figure out what the standard is, and then deal with some of the complexities. It's true that maybe not every system uses that same Montreal cognitive screening test, or maybe they word it differently, but that's not particularly different from how they code different, they code heart failure slightly differently as well. And so I'm not sure this is a unique problem to surveys, I guess. That's the only point.
Yeah, I think it's important to start. International disease condition didn't really get fully adopted. I think it was like 2009 where everyone accepted the ICD-10 codes internationally. Even in US, they didn't roll out till like 2009, right? So like if there is a way to formulate, things like Montreal Cognitive Instrument concepts at an international level, we could start from adopting the MoCA terms and then start using it as part of the OMAP CDM, and hopefully eventually it'll get accepted at an international level. But I think it's best to start, even if it's not complete, and even if it's not 100% foolproof, that we could evolve over time. But it's important to start. So put a stake on the ground, and so that people could gather. It's like, oh yeah, I have this idea, which could complement what your guys are already doing.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Go
as
ahead,
long
Alex.
as long as people that are using the local different system of coding would be happy with the mappings you're going to provide them, or they're going to come up with, map into this sort of whatever standards we're going to come up with, then this solution will work, right? If it's gonna end up in the situation where there's a sort of communities of people that are using the local representation would still be willing to preserve these local concepts as a standard, because the point would be that it's a little bit different, the way we're asking is a little bit different, the answer set is a little bit different, so it's a little bit different thing, then it will not work. So the question, the success of the idea and the story would be mostly based on the factors we're going to do it or not, whether they're going to be happy with the sort of mappings.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point about things that are useful locally versus how does it translate on the community level, is in consideration. But I also think, and again, thankful to the efforts of people who've already tried doing this, we have to start somewhere. And I think the thing is too, and I'm a big fan of iterative processes. You're not going to get from A to Z in one shot. This is something we'll keep building out over time. But it's also possible we're going to make a mistake and we'll see something that's not working and have to go back and revise. Like, I also don't want, I guess, don't let perfection get in the way of good. I think we have to figure out what things are usable, like the lowest hanging fruit, what's usable now, what can we keep working on to make usable later, and also define that sort of usable between a local ecosystem versus the larger Odyssey ecosystem. We can maybe even create sort of a quadrant for what types of use cases plot along that. So that we're getting things out there, that are, thank you, Diane, are helpful and useful. So we're down to a couple minutes. So I just wanted to get through the proposal to move meeting time and then action items. So and I'll also ask the people, because I know there are people who are across the pond who were not able to make it today. So I know earlier meetings are better, but I would like to move this meeting back a half an hour to have it at 10 to 11. So for the people on the call now, is that a conflict or a problem for anyone? Okay, so far so good. So I will ask the larger group just to make sure those who couldn't make it today, it still works for them. And then I think action items, I will share out the materials that Stephanie gave us to review. Please look at those on your own. If you have not filled out the landscape assessment or shared your work with the group, please do. If you know other people who are working on surveys who haven't, please feel free to share it out. You don't necessarily have to be an active member of the Odyssey community. You just have to be somebody working on surveys and wanting to use the OMOP CDM to do that. And then to also think about what are some of the other challenges in using surveys with OMOP, and are there other things we need to think about addressing in addition to vocabulary that we might want to develop and talk about at the Global Symposium as well as moving forward. So I think we're at time. Yeah, well, got a minute. So we have to have a little early. But thank you everybody for the participation and discussion today. And also thank you, Alexander and Stephanie, for introducing the topics. I think it's nice to have the people who are leading these efforts to share with the group and give us that perspective before we start diving in. So that's all I have. Any last comments before we hop off? Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you too.
Thanks,
Bye.
bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.